Hi, welcome to the gun room. It's an upbeat gun room. It's a full gun room as well. Look at me. I'm surrounded. I've got Mitch back. How are you, Mitch?
Great to be back.
We've got Paul. How are you, Paul?
Fine, Tom, and thanks for inviting me back for the second week.
Hey, no problem at all, mate. We need your unbiased opinion. And we've got Jay, the superstar of All or Nothing. We were just talking about it before we clicked record. How are you, mate?
All good, all good.
What's it like under the staircase?
It's always fun.
For our podcast family, Jay's missus is a Leicester supporter, and he was giving his opinion about what the score was last week. So invariably, he's been given bread and water under the staircase. Chaps, we've got a lot to discuss. I mean, I've got reams and reams and reams of paper here that we could bring into play. But first off, 30 years ago, it was the inception of the Premier League. Just got a quick one for you. Guess what who was in bottom slot back then in 1992? Manchester United. And just above them was Arsenal. So it all comes around, doesn't it? Hey, people who mocked you, they get their comeuppance in the end. Thierry Henry's birthday as well. We'll celebrate that. The big man, the king, Premier League superstar. Right. So let's get to. First off, I was just doing a piece on Arsene Wenger, and he's been in the news quite a lot lately. I just thought I'd quickly tell everyone his first ever lineup, which was David Seaman, Lee Dixon, Tony Adams, Steve Bold, Martin Keown, Nigel Winterburn, Paul Merson, David Platt, Patrick Vieira, John Hartson, and Ian Wright. I mean, that floods the memory. I don't know about you, Mitch. You're about 12, aren't you, really? But,
yeah, I just had my 13th birthday yesterday, and so really, I don't know any of these players.
And he's had a haircut as well. Look, very aerodynamic. Right, let's get on. Leicester at the Emirates. What did you make of it, Jay? I'm so buzzed up. It was one of those performances. We are that type of podcast. We don't always have to win, although we'd like to. But it's all about performances. What did you make of that?
Yeah, it was a great performance. Atmosphere seemed great inside the stadium, and the players buzzed off that. So much to enjoy about the performance. Wasn't perfect. Still many elements of the team and the performance, that can be improved and worked on. But all in all, it was a performance full of fluid interchangeable positions, and it was great to see the players enjoying their football. Leicester came and you know what I said last week, I thought it was going to be a tough game, and it proved to be a tough game. Leicester did bring it to us in the first half especially, and it was tight at times. Leicester had a couple of chances, but we played some lovely stuff, full of energy, and yeah, enjoyed the performance.
Best one for a while?
I think from an attacking point of view, obviously, I'm sure we'll go into Gabriel Jesus and what he's brought to the team, but his energy and his off the ball movement and his quick feet, and his ability to move across the line and pick the ball up in areas and drive and off the ball running. He's brought so much to the team already. So I think from an attacking point of view, definitely that was one of the most exciting performances that I've seen for a while. Yeah.
Paul, what did you make of it? Did you see it?
Yeah, I was.
He's on an Arsenal podcast. For God's sake. What are you talking about?
Obviously, I had most of the whole game, but I did watch the highlights on Match of the Day at the weekend, and I completely reinforced the points Jay's been making there. I think I said last week on the podcast that I think Gabriel Jesus is just been a fantastic signing for Arsenal, and it's not just his goal scoring ability; it's the way he links up with the rest of the attackers, the way he's an outlet ball for the midfield all the time, the way he creates space for others. And if he's not scoring himself, then he's creating opportunities for the players as well. So that's a really, really valuable asset for any team to have. And also, he's the type of player you would know better than me, that lifts the crowd, and you need someone to lift the crowd to get the crowd on side. I think he's made a real impact in that regard as well. And I mean, looking at his goals, I mean, the first one was a fabulous chip into the corner of the net, and the second one's a tap in, and forwards get tap ins. It doesn't always have to be a spectacular goal. So right place, right time, took the opportunity, reacted well. He was involved in the build up as well for the third goal, was Leicester's keeper making a mistake. So. You know, for a new signing to come in after 2 games and already look like he played in that role for Arsenal all his life, I think, you know, it is a massive plus. If I was being slightly negative, I would just say I still have a slight concern about Ramsdale and goal. I think he was definitely to blame for the second goal, and it's kind of quite ironic, isn't it? We praised Saliba last week, and you know it was an unfortunate goal. But once again, I thought Ramsdale should have taken responsibility there, because the goalie can see what's going on behind. It's up to him to call and direct the defender. But apart from that, you know, if I'd have been you guys, I'd have been delighted with the performance. 2 games, 2 wins, joint top of the table. What more do you want?
Hey, Mitch, we haven't had a chance to talk to you about Jesus. That front line now is looking super exciting, isn't it? Martinelli, Saka, and Jesus. What did you make of their performance generally as an attacking force? And are we kind of getting carried away, Mitch?
I mean, there's a lot to be excited about with this front line, and I think Jesus really just ties it all together in a way that Lacazette couldn't, because of his kind of one-dimensionality with dropping deep, linking play, and not really doing much else. We're getting a lot more dynamic movement from Jesus, which is helping Martinelli by a byproduct. And I mean, we could have seen a little bit of a slow start from Saka and Odegaard on the right side, but like, we aren't relying on them. Our left side dynamics have been like a world of difference so far this season, and I think a huge part of that has been Jesus. He's kind of popping up those areas. He and Martinelli are rotating, like where Martinelli will pop up in central positions and Jesus will pop up on the left and even on the right. It creates this really, really interesting fluidity that is really, really hard to defend against. And then we're even seeing deeper with Zinchenko and Xhaka, where they're kind of rotating in their positions. So when you have this positional fluidity, it makes it really, really difficult to stop Arsenal. We look unpredictable. We're scoring goals, 6 goals in 2 games to start the year. World of difference from the last from last season, where we had 0 goals to start the first 2 games. So I mean, Jesus obviously is the star of the show. With, I mean, he had 4 GA in the Leicester game. But I mean, the dynamics that he's created with Martinelli and with Saka has been really, really fun to watch, because our attacking dynamics are completely different than they were last season, and we're seeing the effects from it.
I'll tell you what I am a little bit troubled about. I mean, things looking good. We've always got to find something, haven't we, to have a bit of interest and a bit of chat about. ESR, how hard has that boy got to work to get back in this side now? Because the way it's shaping up, there's not an obvious space, is there? What do you make of that, Jay? Can we get him back in? Is he going to be happy with doing this occasional sort of guesting slot?
He needs to stay fit more than anything. He's I don't think ability or I don't think ability is even in question. I mean, it's healthy competition, you know, to have, you know, good players in a number of positions. But for him, it's all about fitness, and if he can stay fit, I'm sure, you know, there's going to be plenty of games for everybody to, you know, to get their minutes. He's a key member of the team. You know, he might not be, you know, it was only, you know, a year or so ago where Odegaard wasn't in the team and he wasn't playing week in, week out. And now we all consider him, obviously he's the captain, but we consider him to be a key member of the first team, you know, the starting 11. So I don't think there's anything to worry about. I don't think he will be too concerned. I think he's just, you know, everybody knows he's just got to stay fit. He's got to get fit first. He's got to stay fit. You know, we can't forget how heavily he contributed to the team last year. You know, he scored plenty of goals, and he was a massive member of that good period, sort of the second third of the season. So he's got to work hard. obviously the longer the team does well, it's going to be harder for Mikel to get him into the starting 11. But I'm sure Smith Rowe's not stupid. He'll know that if the team's doing well, he's either got to rely on an injury or a dip in form in the team, and let's hope there's no dip in form with the team. We need to keep this consistency up. It's been a great start. He's not going to be. I mean, there's nothing to worry about from. I don't think he's just got to get fit.
Paul, there was a number of really good performances there, but the one I'm really interested in is Granit Xhaka. It was like a man possessed. He was like a centre forward at one stage. I was like, who is this guy? They've like, he's been abducted by aliens. They've swapped him over. What did you make of his performance? Because I haven't seen a Granit Xhaka like that since whenever.
Probably since he first signed for Arsenal, Tom. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I can only comment on the highlights I've seen, so I'm probably not going to give a true reflection of his performance. But once again, he's in the right place at the right time to score the third goal, and I think if there's an occasion, the way he's been since towards the end of last season, start of this season, because I thought he played really well at Crystal Palace as well. He led by example in that game as well. And to me, he's kind of making a strong case that if Odegaard is out injured and can't be captain, he could step back up and pick up his former role again as captain of the team. But yeah, I mean, it's been quite a transformation in his attitude and his performance now. Whether you could say that's linked with the World Cup coming up when he wants to make sure his performances merit selection for the national team. I don't know, but it's definitely a factor in a lot of players' minds this season that they're really going to push in the first half of the season to make sure they get picked for their national teams. But I'm sure you lot as Arsenal are delighted with the transformation in attitude, in his contribution to the team, and also he's scoring goals now as well. So for your midfield players, that's what you want, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Mitch, we'll talk about the documentary series All or Nothing, but Xhaka has kind of been portrayed in a different sort of light. What have you made of the way that he's coming across?
Yeah, I mean, I think over the last year has kind of been a transformational process for Xhaka's image in the eyes of Arsenal fans. Like, he's had more chances where he's given interviews, given his side of situations and stuff like that. So we've gotten a much bigger look into like his thought process about things, like how he carries himself, both as a professional and as a player. And seeing that in All or Nothing kind of.
Mitch, can I just say as well, he's got a very hot wife.
Sure. Like a lot of players. He's been able to show like who he really is rather than like the 90 minutes that we see of him a week. And so when you have this image of a player because you just watch him for 90 minutes, you don't see like, I don't know, you don't see these like gentle moments of Xhaka where he's like with his daughters. It's a much different person because it's an actual person as opposed to this like just player that's on the field. So, you get a much different look. And I think, I mean, his role has changed a lot in the last year, which I think has changed his image in the eyes of fans a lot. I mean, we saw a very different Xhaka, or we've seen a very different Xhaka to start the year with these last two matches. And I think kind of what I was saying with like the left side dynamics changing a lot and becoming a lot more effective. I think like Martinelli playing better and Zinchenko being there has helped Xhaka a lot in terms of being able to go further forward. I think we have this 2-3-5 like build up, but I feel like it was like a 4.5 up top. Xhaka was never really fully occupying that left half space. We saw that a lot last weekend of him fully within that left half space. Across the attacking line, like he's up against the defenders, and we hadn't seen that, and so it allows for him to be in that position to pounce on that third goal. And so, I mean, the same with Smith Rowe, that we've got a lot of different options at midfield. We've been like heavily linked with Yuri Tielemans for 8 months now, and like it's getting to a point where it's like, well, I can see why the club are kind of taking their time on this and like not really rushing themselves on it, because we've got both Smith Rowe and Fabio Vieira coming back who can play those roles. We've got Xhaka who's playing really well. We've got Sambi in his second season. We got Odegaard, obviously. Like, we have a lot of different players that can play these roles, and that's really good because, like, I guarantee you, Xhaka has seen all the talk of, oh, the club is probably looking to upgrade his position. He probably knows the club has been heavily looking at Yuri Tielemans, and that probably motivates a competitor like Xhaka to be like, all right, well, I'm gonna be that player in that position. I think it's really funny that when he was signed, Wenger described him as a box-to-box midfielder, and everyone kind of was like, what are you talking about? And now he's like truly playing that role. It's like become this like full circle thing where the beginning of his career, that's what he, like, Wenger saw him as, and now he's in that role and doing a great job of it. So hopefully it continues, but it'll be interesting to see how the future of the position shakes out just through this season and into next, with all the different players that we have at the disposal that can play in those places.
Jay, is it purely a case of Xhaka never got the opportunity to play his natural game or the game that he would prefer to play because of the elements around him, that they weren't as strong? So he had to play a slightly different, more defensive role. Now we've got Zinchenko and people like that. He's coming to the fore. You know, we've got to take this easy. We can't just say on the back of one game and one particularly good performance. But do you think that his game is now about to evolve because the team has changed so much?
Yeah, well, it started last season, didn't it? Where he was a bit more advanced. He was playing a little bit more further forward, and he was getting into areas that he hadn't previously, he wouldn't go into. And he was slightly more, slightly deeper because we didn't have the players, that we have now. Look, we all have our different opinion on Xhaka. Like he's, keep in mind, first and foremost, the All or Nothing documentary is, the documentary in general is great at showing the more human side of footballers, and the fact that they're affected by not just the players but the manager, and the way that they're affected by criticism, and it's great from that point of view. And it was, it's great that they focused on Xhaka and they went into his house and met his wife and saw that side of him. And you live in hope that, supporters don't, if he does get sent off or if he does do something silly, and I suppose this applies to any of the players, if they do similar, that supporters don't hammer them as much and attack them, because they are obviously humans as well. Xhaka in general, I think he's playing as well as he's played for us since we signed him, and long may it continue. I still think we can upgrade. I still think there are better players out there, but I think it's not just from a technical point that, Arteta likes his physical presence and his leadership skills, and that's a big part of that centre midfield, because I don't think you get that with Thomas Partey. You don't get that leadership with Thomas Partey, and I think Arteta leans on Xhaka from that point of view. So look, I hope it continues. He's a good player. He's everybody's known he's a good player. He's been sent off, and he's let the team down on so many times that it's sometimes you can't always just let go of that. Look, he's playing well, and long may it continue. And I think he's also, like Mitch said, we haven't pursued Tielemans. We haven't signed another centre midfielder, probably because of the improvement we've seen from Xhaka. And maybe, I don't know, I'm hopeful that we can bring someone else in. Maybe not this window, but, ultimately long term. I think he is his position is somewhere where we can definitely improve on still, even though he's playing well. Long may it continue. And on Saturday against Leicester, that was as good as I've seen him play, so fair play.
Right, let's talk about that Leicester game. We went in with a 4-2-3-1. It was Aaron Ramsdale, Ben White, Willow Saliba, I like to call him, Gabriel Zinchenko, Thomas Partey, Xhaka, Saka, Martin Odegaard, Gabriel Martinelli, and Gabriel Jesus, we do like a Gabriel, don't we? We're just like collecting them. What's your name, Gabriel? Oh, come and get contract with Arsenal. Paul, let's have a look at Leicester first before we get into the crux of the game. Myself and Jay and you were talking about there seems to be a kind of weird sort of vibe. Even when Brendan Rodgers came on for the interview afterwards, there seemed to be a lack of something. There's something going on at the club. They've got the money. They don't have to sell players. They were FA Cup winners and Premier League winners not so long ago. What's going on down there? It just seems like there's a null and void vibe down there.
Yeah, I mean, I can't quite get to the bottom of what's going on in Leicester because, as you say, I think they've got quite a capable and talented manager in Brendan Rodgers. I think his record speaks for itself. They're both at that other team across Stanley Park, the team in Glasgow, and at Leicester as well. So yeah, I think they've got a proven manager there with this, with a proven record at the top level. There's some really good players in that squad still. I think something James Maddison's goal. He's always going to be a threat, but there's. If you concede 4 goals away from home in your first away game of the season, as a Leicester fan, that raises questions straight away, doesn't it? I think letting Kasper Schmeichel go might prove to be a bit of a misjudgment because you saw that Danny Ward simply was not up to the level that Schmeichel has set out Leicester for a number of seasons. And you can't survive in the Premier League without a top keeper. And I just don't think Danny Ward is the answer in that respect for Leicester. And I think as well, because even when they won the league, the following season, that summer, they sold Kanté to Chelsea. So even though they were league champions, they were still a selling club. And I think part of Leicester's problems might be they still have the mentality of a selling club. And if they were to lose Fofana to Chelsea, if they were to lose Maddison to Newcastle, then you really, and if Tielemans were to join Arsenal, then you do wonder how they're going to get through the season. I still think they've got enough about them to survive, but I think if they scraped into the top half of the table, that would be quite an achievement in the circumstances. I don't know what the financial situation is less at the moment. I don't know if they've overspent and they haven't got money to spare. But in terms of falls from grace, I'm kind of compared to Blackburn Rovers in 94-95 when they won the league but never left a legacy. Same for Leicester City, they won the league but they never pushed on from winning the league. Even now, 6-7 seasons later, they're kind of still paying the price of that. And there just seems to be a mindset about the club that at the moment that they're quite happy to kind of muddle around in mid-table with the odd cup run, which, given their history, might not be that bad an outcome. But given where they were within the league title, you'd kind of expect a bit more from them.
Absolutely. Mitch, there was some standout performances. We'll get to the goals and various bits and pieces. What did you make of Martinelli's performance? I was particularly impressed because he was up against Fofana, and there's been a lot said about him being a stellar defender. Well, I thought he put him in his pocket.
Yeah, I think it was one of Martinelli's best performances in an Arsenal shirt, without a doubt. He was absolutely phenomenal. Gabriel Jesus had 4 goals and assists, but I still think Martinelli was the best player on the pitch. He was just
you've blown it now. We can't do man of the match now.
He was just relentless. He like you were talking about, Fofana is a really, really good player. There's a reason that Leicester wants so much money for him. There's a reason Chelsea's willing to pay that much money for him. And Martinelli made him look horrendous. And I think that's just a testament to how good Martinelli can be. And I think it's something that I've noticed with him is he plays up to his competition a lot. He plays to the level of the competition a lot. He will tend to go up against really, really tough opponents and play really well. Like some of his best performances last season were against Man City, against Liverpool. He plays up to his competition really, really well. But then, North London Derby at the end of last season, he was going up against Emerson Royale and Eric Dyer, and he wasn't that effective. So that's something I would like to see some improvement on, because when he plays against really, really good players like Fofana, Robin, well, I guess not Robertson because I would be defending Saka, but Trent Alexander-Arnold, and he plays up against really, really good teams, and we saw a lot of that this weekend. And I'm really glad that he got a goal, because he absolutely deserved some sort of offensive output from that kind of performance. He was really, really good.
I'll tell you what, as well, he's looking like the player that we had before he got the injury. I think it was against Liverpool, wasn't it? And he was out for quite a long spell. Jay, let's get to Gabriel Jesus. Phenomenal home debut. Everyone's been banging on about it, and we're going to do the same. We're not original. We don't claim to be. But it was a wicked performance, wasn't it? Talk us through that first goal. I mean, that was an exceptional goal. As a striker yourself, former striker, obviously. Haven't got the legs for it now, have you, mate?
Not at all.
No.
For many years.
Talk us through that goal and what it takes to get it.
Yeah, he was it. Oh, you got to refresh my memory now. Was it Xhaka? Did he take the ball into the box and did he lay it back?
It kind of pinged about, wasn't it? There was Martinelli, it was Xhaka and Jesus interplaying.
He was sort of as the way the camera was. He was on the sort of the far side of the 18-yard box, and he no backlift, Bergkamp-esque, wasn't it, from sort of peak Bergkamp years, and he used the defenders, Jesus did, to sort of bend the ball, and it just dropped lovely into the back of the net, and more than deserved it. And more than anything, the Jesus performance, he just looks like he's enjoying his football. He looks like he's maybe playing for Pep. I don't know whether I wouldn't say it was too much for him, because he obviously contributed heavily, but it looks like there's a bit of weight's been lifted off his shoulders, and he's just been told by Arteta just to go out there and enjoy yourself. And you're the main man. You're our top striker. You're going to play. And I mean,
do you think Pep swamped him with tactical sort of nonsense rather? And obviously he wasn't the main man. He was part of a very successful team. Do you think that's another factor as well?
I think maybe not from a tactical point of view, but just maybe he didn't feel that Pep truly believed in him to lead the line properly, because he wasn't always, well, he didn't feature as their main striker too often, did he? You know, and obviously they went out and signed Haaland. And I mean, Haaland, I'm sure, will go on to be an absolute world star for years to come. But, you know, if you were to look at their starts to the season, Haaland's had a good start, and so is Jesus. You know, there's not too much difference between them at the minute. So, I mean, lovely first goal. You know, the way he turned, was it Johnny Evans in the second half, where could have had, I mean, that is just, we haven't seen that at the club for quite a while. You know, Aubameyang, he had pace, but Aubameyang would rarely do that, where he would roll defenders back into the defender and roll him. And Jesus isn't the tallest, and Johnny Evans he's an old school defender. You know, he's going to be snarling and all over, and he just rolled him perfectly in on goal. He's technically so good. You know, his touches in and around the box, and he's a good footballer as well as a very good forward. And he also comes across so well on camera. And he's a humble guy, and he's just slotted perfectly into the team. But you know, lovely goal. I mean, I don't know about. Obviously, this doesn't apply to you, Paul. But I don't know what you guys think. He's done. For me, he's done better than I expected him to do so far. You know, I knew he was a good striker, but I didn't think he was this good. You know, and no, I love the performance. It was a throwback to Thierry. You know, how quick.
Bergkamp and Thierry Henry, the same podcast, Jay. What's in that drink you've got on? Unbelievable.
Yeah.
No, he's very impressive. Paul, well, let's talk about the second goal. He's got a sort of a different way of doing things, isn't he? Jesus, he can score with his head. He can score the stunning goals. He can score the tap-ins. That's the variety that he brings. This one was off the head of Vardy. He was just poaching, wasn't he, really? And that's what Arsenal have missed, something of a poacher.
Yeah, I think it's something most teams, miss from time to time. But yeah, I mean, it's the anticipation, it's the reaction, it's being in the right place at the right time. It's also finding the space to make the header because, as I recall, he's not particularly tightly marked either. So, it's a classic poacher's goal. You're in the right place, the ball goes across, you react first, you're 2 yards away from goal, you tap it over the line, it's a goal. You don't need to score a 30-yard spectacular one week in, week out. And I agree with what Jay's saying there, the way he links the play with the rest of the team, the way he makes space for himself, and also he excites the crowd. Nothing like more as a supporter is to see the opposite centre half being turned inside out by a pacey forward. And I can see. I mean, I guess compared to the attack that was starting last season, Jesus brought a different dimension. He's an instant crowd favourite already, and I think that just gives the whole club a lift. And I think. I said that on the podcast last week. I thought he was an excellent signing for Arsenal. When I saw him playing for Man City, it's. You made the point about Pep there, Jay, and I think as well. I don't think Guardiola kind of built the team around Jesus' strengths particularly, but I think Arteta has kind of learned from that, has kind of try to get the balls to Jesus, get the balls from his space, get him to link up the rest of the team, and make him the star player. Because I think as well, players thrive on confidence. So in Gabriel Jesus' case, if you've gone from battling to get in the team to being told by the manager, your name's first on the team sheet, I want you to respond by scoring goals for me. Well, so far he's repaid the manager's favour. And I think out of all the summer signings, I know Haaland's been the big name, but it'll be interesting to see at the end of the season which of those two finishes with the highest tally of goals.
Mitch, we've brought in Zinchenko and Jesus. Obviously, we're going on about Jesus's goal input and all that sort of thing, but two proven winners been brought in from Manchester City that we didn't expect to get two. Has that had a major effect on the dynamic? Do you see that as a major reason where we're kind of pushing ahead now as opposed to last season?
Yeah, I think this kind of fades into something like that Jay mentioned that I wanted to talk about, which is like, I think that there's been like a clear difference between both of their roles within Manchester City and within now. And despite how good of a manager Pep Guardiola is, I do think that his system can prove to be a little bit tactically rigid when it comes to certain players. Like we've seen these two players now leave the system, and they're playing with a lot of fluidity, playing with a lot of depth in their style. And we've also seen a player that played similarly go into their system and become kind of boring and rigid in Jack Grealish, who I've talked about on this spot before. I'm a huge fan of the player. I do think he's going to take a big step this season after spending 1 year in Pep's system. But I think that there's a sense of rigidness and not allowing players to truly play to their strengths if it goes outside of the tactical strengths. And we're seeing the freedom that Zinchenko and Jesus have now in this Arsenal system, where, like I was talking about earlier, they're fluid in their positional play. They're not standing in one place. They're not like making sure. I think there's clear influences of positional play that Arteta takes into account, but I don't think it's as technically rigid as Pep's, where you can only be this amount of players on the width of the pitch and this amount of players vertically on the pitch. Like that's kind of like there's like these 18 zones that you're going to stay individually in each one. We've seen a lot more flowing in and out, really nice interplays between these players, and I think that we have an opportunity to see the best out of these two really, really talented players. I mean, like we haven't talked really much about Zinchenko, but like Kyle Walker said when he was on the team that Zinchenko is one of the 3 highest technical quality players in the entire Manchester City squad, which is a huge thing to say about a left back when you have players like Kevin De Bruyne and Riyad Mahrez and Raheem Sterling, and he's up there with the best of them. And as a left back, like I think we have a real opportunity to see him in a variety of different roles and with a lot of fluidity in his play. And just like Jesus, hopefully really, really flourish like we have seen in the last couple of games.
Paul, I just thought I'd point out this this picture up here. Where is it? There. Remember that?
I can't.
It's Steve McMahon. 1 minute.
Oh, Steve McMahon, please don't.
Yeah, I put that on the wall for you, Paul. Okay? So that we could all relive and rub that in the wound.
Yeah, do you have any darts available?
Let's get on to the 2 goals that they scored, because we kind of nicked in front, didn't we, after a minute or so of them scoring. But let's have a look at those 2 goals. William Saliba at fault for that. I thought Ben White could have done a little bit more when he was kind of tracking back. It was an odd one, wasn't it? It was straight over the top. Saliba, if he hadn't have done what he did, Jay, he would have allowed Vardy to get through for sure, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I think just having somebody playing against somebody of Vardy's quality puts that little bit of doubt in your mind, doesn't it? You know, he's always buzzing around. He's a pain in the arse, isn't he? To be perfectly honest.
Not as much as his wife.
Yeah. And I think Paul, you touched on it earlier. I think Ramsdale maybe could have helped out a bit more. Could have spoke to him, or just told him just to clear it, because there was. I mean, I don't know if you guys picked up on it. What I've liked about Saliba's start to the season is that, you know, what I've noticed that when he needs to clear the ball, he just clears it. He doesn't try to overcomplicate things too much. And if he needs to put it out, you know, the old, not Rose Ed, the old school, you know, Rose Ed, but, you know, he won't overcomplicate things too much, and he won't try and find a pass. If he needs to kick it out, we'll kick it out. And on that occasion, I think he overthought it, whereas he should have just put it out, even for a corner or whatever. But I do think he could have done with a bit more help from the goalkeeper. But I said last week, it will be a test this week, obviously the Leicester game, playing against Vardy, because he's as, even at the age he's at, he's still as good as they come in this league. And I think the fact that it was Vardy that he was up against just put that little bit of doubt into the back of his head. And I mean, to be honest, I think he still had a good game, Saliba. I think he still didn't let it bother him. I thought the crowd reaction was brilliant in the stadium, the way that they all you know, clapped and cheered him, cheered Saliba. And you know what, yeah, it was a bad own goal, but I don't think it bothered him too much, in the sense I still think he put in a decent performance.
Paul, I'm going to skip you for a sec and go to Mitch, basically to talk about the second error, which was Maddison put it under Jamie Vardy. He should have done better with that, shouldn't he? I'm a big Ramsdale fan, I've got to admit, but that was a real schoolboy job.
Yeah, it's a issue that we're seeing a lot with Ramsdale, and it's with his near post. Like, he's a fantastic goalkeeper, like really, really good shot stopper, and just excellent with his feet. Like, we were talking about that Jesus turn on Johnny Evans. I mean, Ramsdale hit a crazy ball to get it there. Like, a decent performance in that part of his game on the ball for last weekend. But the shot stopping part, obviously, on the Saliba own goal, I think he had a chance where he could have had something to stop that. And then on this one, definitely getting megged near post is not what you want as a goalkeeper. That's one of those goals that sticks with you. And so I think it's clearly something that the coaching staff knows about. This is clearly something that Ramsdale knows about, the coaching staff knows about. It's something that he's going to improve on, but it's something that is concerning to see. And I think we're seeing oppositions target a lot more. Like, we saw Maddison go towards the byline and take a shot, as opposed to trying to put a ball across, because Ramsdale tends to be a little bit weaker on his near post. And I think that's, as an attacker playing against Arsenal, that's something you're going to keep in mind. And you're like, a near post shot usually isn't what you want. But if it's against Ramsdale, he's traditionally struggled with that. I would have a better chance of scoring that. So that's something that we need to keep an eye on. Definitely need to be critical of when it comes to Ramsdale. Still a very, very good keeper. He's still only 23, 24. He's a baby in goalkeeper years. He's going to improve. This is not an end product by any means when it comes to Aaron Ramsdale. But yeah, not a great goal to concede. something that needs to be paid attention to and worked on from him.
Mitch, do you think it's a case of when he came to us, he was like the breath of fresh air, wasn't he? He was like, even he couldn't have thought that he would depose Leno of the #1 slot, which he did. Now he's got all that pressure. He is the #1 and has been theoretically the #1 for some time. Has that had an effect on his game?
I don't think so. I think one thing that we can pull from All or Nothing is that he's in general a very confident guy in his abilities. He's very critical of his own abilities as well. Like we saw in, I think it was Aston Villa, we had the late goal at the end when we were already up 3-0. He comes into the changing room pissed off. And like that's the kind of mentality you want from a goalkeeper, where you're mad about losing the clean sheet, but you still won the game 3-1. Like still a great performance, and he still played really well, but he's mad about losing the clean sheet. Like that's a kind of mentality that's like isn't gonna be like, all right, well, I'm the starter and Leno's gone, so I don't really need to care anymore. Like he's got clear aspirations where he wants to be one of the best goalkeepers in England. He wants to be one of the best goalkeepers in the world. He obviously, like every single player this year, is gunning for a spot starting in a World Cup. And he's got fierce competition in Jordan Pickford, who's been that guy for England for years. And so Ramsdale has to start like have these performances where he's putting in consistently. And he knows this. He's a competitor. He's going to actively try to. If any player gets into a starting position and is like, all right, great, my position's safe, I can just coast. They are not built for Arsenal. They're not built for the Premier League, quite frankly. They're probably just not built for professional sports. There is constant pressure from people behind you, from loftier aspirations rather than just playing week in and week out. So I think Ramsdale's too much of a competitor to, at least from our perspective of what we know about him, for him to be sitting back and coasting because he's just the starter and he doesn't have any loftier expectations for himself other than that.
Well, as I say, there were two talking points. One was the Saliba goal, own goal, and the other was the Vardy penalty. Paul, what do you make of that?
Yeah, well, it's still a debate these days, is about what constitutes a penalty and what doesn't. I mean, I only saw very brief on Match of the Day, so I think Leicester had a strong case that there might have been a penalty there. But you know, these days you can never quite be sure what decision the officials or VAR are going to come together with and decide to is appropriate. So, from a Leicester point of view, I think they were just themselves quite unlucky not to have got a penalty there, and whether that would have changed the balance of the game or not, I don't know. But yeah, I hate to trot out the old phrase that over the course of the season, these things kind of level themselves out, and maybe they do, maybe I think less they do these days, to be honest. But yeah, it could have been quite decisive. But either way, even if it had been given, I don't think it affected the outcome of the result. I think Arsenal have enough firepower to respond to that and to score enough goals to keep the lead intact.
It's quite funny you should say that, because at times that game reminded me of some of the Arsenal games under Wenger, where you could have won a game 5-4 or lost it 5-4. It was that type of, you know, we're fine up the front and just a little bit patchy at the back.
Yeah, I mean, as a neutral, I only saw the highlights, but it was a very entertaining game. You know, it really was. From end-to-end stuff, both teams going for them, both were posting attacking threats as well. And you know, as an advertising for the Premier League, I thought it was excellent.
I'm just going to say to our podcast family, when you watch Match of the Day, it doesn't tell the whole story, to be honest.
Yes,
they do crunch it down, and it's either in our favour and very often not. Just an interesting one. Darren England, the ref, has given 8 pens in 15 matches, but our saviour was Mike Dean. He was in VAR. Who would have thought, Jake? Mike Dean, of all people, for God's sake.
I know. In real time, it looked like a penalty, and Vardy did well, but I think it was, you know, he's got previous, hasn't he? Vardy thrown in a dive, and I thought
it was when Ramsdale kind of he saw what was going on, and he did pull back, very kind of amdram, wasn't it? He went back with his arms wide open, and but the one that concerned me, Jay, was no yellow card.
Yeah, I didn't understand that. I didn't understand that. But like, I just wanted to go back to the Ramsdale thing. He made quite a good save from Fofana early on, didn't he? And he hasn't had the best start to the season. He had a few jittery moments against Palace, didn't he? And I think there's definitely room for improvement. But there's also, like Mitch said, there's also really good aspects to his game that he showed this season. And he's still young, isn't he? And he's still got plenty of time to improve. And I'm sure he will improve. I mean, I don't think nobody's concerned, are they, about Ramsdale? No one's. We've all still got full faith in him. He's probably not done enough to displace Pickford from the England team yet, I wouldn't have thought. But to be honest, I don't really care about the England side that much, to be honest. But, just we've said this a million times, haven't we? The fan base always need that person to criticise after every game, and maybe certain people went towards Ramsdale, but it's the way it is, isn't it?
Well, I was on Richard Butler's podcast over and over and over again, and it was not that he was doing it, but it was a general thing about Odegaard, who I think is a fabulous player. And we kind of went through the whole thing with the Palace match that he was virtually sat on. As you say, though, it is one of those ones where people try to look for a scapegoat, even if there isn't one. Right, let's do the stats. Arsenal 49.9 possession, Leicester 50.1, surprisingly. Total shots for Arsenal 19, Leicester 6. On target for Arsenal 7, Leicester 2. Off target 8 for Arsenal and 3 for Leicester. It was quite a comprehensive win. We could have actually won that probably by about 6 goals, couldn't we, Mitch?
Yeah, Gabriel Jesus missed 2 really, really good chances. He could have had 4 goals in the match. We were absolutely peppering him. It was really, really fun to watch. And I mean, like, the goals that we conceded, other than like maybe like Ramsdale in the near post, like they weren't like overarching like defensive worries that we're worrying about. Like we're like, oh, our defense got torn to shreds. Like, oh, Saliba was terrible. Like that none of those things were true. So very easily that match could have ended 6-0. We even had a penalty shot of our own on the other side. That in the case that the Vardy one was not given, that one was also not given, which at the very least, it's nice to see consistency, if not in general, than just within the same match. That's something that like we didn't see in the Manchester City match last year on New Year's Day, where the Xhaka penalty got given, the Odegaard one didn't. And, that kind of like inconsistency is something we've struggled with a lot with Premier League refs. And so okay, if you're not going to give that Vardy one, don't give the one for Jesus. I think both could have been penalties, both weren't. It's one of those like those tougher calls that is like the reason we have VAR. It totally could have been a way bigger scoreline. I think the scoreline is a little bit generous to Leicester because the performance was a 4-0 plus performance to Arsenal. Like we dominated that game. There wasn't a single moment where I was worried. And also there was 2 times in which Leicester brought the game back within 1 goal, and we would just immediately put a nail in that coffin again. We like gave up the penalty, or like seemingly gave up the penalty as we were up 2-0, and then it wasn't given, and then we immediately go score a third. They get 1 back, they get another back, and then we immediately go score a 4th. Like it was this immediateness that was like really, really great to see. That I mean, we've yet to be trailing so far this season, but I'm no longer worried for when we are, because we only came back from in a match 1 time last season. It was that Wolves win, which was an awesome performance. But I don't think we had that like intensity to go get a goal. And also we have so much more quality on our bench. Like our bench for this match was better than every single bench that we put out for the entirety of last season. Like really, really great stuff to have Smith Rowe, to have Nketiah as those attacking options off the bench, as opposed to like Pepe and like
El Neni.
we're like really, really improving our depth. And, you know, when it comes to Smith Rowe, where it's like, even if he's not starting every match, having that kind of quality to come in matches like we saw with last season when he had that run of games where he was scoring in sub appearances is really, really valuable. And it's going to make it so we can actually like sustain success where we can win in different game states when we go down, or it's a tough low block. Like, we have these different players to unlock different situations. And, you know, there's a lot to be excited about offensively for Arsenal this season.
Right, let's talk about all or nothing. We've got a varied sort of menu tonight. Jay, have you seen the most recent three?
Yeah.
It's quite interesting that we should give Arteta, I know he's had a good bashing off various people, but I'm just going to read you this out of the changes that have befallen Arsenal. When he took over, his first side was Leno, Maitland-Niles, David Luiz, Socrates, Saka, Torreira, Xhaka, Nelson, Ozil, Aubameyang and Lacazette. And you can see, well, we read it out earlier, the team sheet. It's a massive change. That's been a massive job, hasn't it? And when you look at what United are suffering now, I don't think he's done too bad, do you?
No, he's done a really good job. And all or nothing, it shows that, and some of the interviews with the coaching staff and Edu, and they all say that, you know, tactically he's right up there. He's absolutely spot on, and I don't think that's up for debate. I think it just takes time, doesn't it? You know, he's had a fair amount of criticism in the way, you know, towards him, aimed at him based on his treatment of certain players, and you know, there's been many people have turned around, or he's been criticised, but you know, he doesn't like Aubameyang, doesn't like Pepe, doesn't like this Ozil, doesn't like, you know, but it's clear that you know, a result of all or nothing is definitely shown that if you're not up for if you're not part of it, or you haven't got the right attitude, then you're going to get eased out of the team. And obviously the team that you just listed in his first game, and the squad that he inherited. I mean, there were so many players that just, you know, it was obvious. You know, when you look at the team now, look how unified the squad is, and look at, they're all very, I know we've said this a million times on here, but the signings that Arteta's made, they all come across very similar type of characters. And you know, you compare this group to the one that he took over, and they were just, I mean, I bet they were all lovely chaps in their own way, but not what we needed for, you know. And we weren't in a great spot, and again, like everybody's been saying, it's United are in a similar position. Their squad's full of players that maybe don't see themselves at the club much longer, and they're taking the large wages, and you know, it took time, didn't it, for us to get rid of those people and replace them with hungry, younger players with maybe a little point to prove. I mean, long may it continue for United, you know, because I mean, they're a shambles, aren't they? And it was, I mean, that Brentford game, you know, we've been there a few times ourselves, haven't we? You know, especially the back end of Wenger, and there was a few performances under Emery, you know, where we were just getting battered, and it was tragic, and you couldn't see how it was going to improve. The attitude of the players, you know, you look at Xhaka, and you know, the whole telling the crowd to F off and do one, and throwing the armband on the floor, and that being allowed in the squad, you know, and obviously that's not the case now, and there's certain standards that Mikel's enforced. I mean, all or nothing showed, I know it's edited in a certain way, but it showed Aubameyang, you know, what he just turned up in Barcelona, didn't he? When Edu didn't even know he was there, you know, and Aubameyang's driving around in.
I thought you were off then, Mitch. I thought you were going somewhere.
Yeah,
He yapped out of his chair. I thought he was going to score celebrate a goal.
Yeah, he's driving that Lamborghini and he's got a matching tracksuit, the same colour as his car. Like
the goat outfit, wasn't it, Jeff?
Proper tool, wasn't he?
Yeah.
What a weapon! Like,
I tell you, have you seen as you're our adopted toffee pool? You're in a toffee household. Did you get to see any more of All or Nothing?
I haven't so far. Sorry, Tom. I'd be lying if I said I had, but I have read reviews about it in the paper, so I've got a working knowledge of what's going on. And I mean, just go back to the points Jay's been making there. I know Mitch made these points about Arteta before. I think outside looking in, he took on a really difficult job where there's a lot of players similar to Man United who were there picking up the big bucks on long contracts, not really buying into the cause, not really buying into the vision. And I think from a manager's point of view, that's what always one of the hardest things to do, move out the people who aren't on board, because they're a malign influence in the dressing room and they have an influence on the younger players. You want your younger casual players to come through believing in the manager, not listening to the pros who are on big fat contracts, and encourage them not to listen to the manager, not to participate, not to give their best. So I think he's gradually, that team now is more and more an Arteta team rather than the one he's inherited from Wenger and Emery. And I think as well, you mentioned some of the youngsters coming down, like Smith. I've always been hugely impressed with Smith. I saw him about 4 seasons ago when he was playing against Everton, Goodison Park for Arsenal. And we were all talking, who is that guy? He's so good, I've not seen him before. So it's bring the young talent through as well. And if you don't do that, if you let the senior pros dictate the ethos of the dressing room, and you could have a view that towards the end of the Wenger years, maybe that was the case, then you're going to end up like Man United in a terminal decline. So I think, I know some of you guests on this show haven't been totally convinced by Mikel Arteta. As I signed up in, I think given the hand he was dealt, he's done a good job. And you can see, someone like Gabriel Jesus would not have joined Arsenal if he didn't believe in Arteta's ability to bring the best out. So, and I think that's a recommendation for how hard he thought of he is.
Mitch, it's been interesting from the point of view of because there was all the Kroenke kerfuffle, wasn't there, and that bad vibe, bad feeling, and then we had Raul lining his pockets and Mislintat, and it was all misfiring, wasn't it? This series has actually shown, especially with the Aubameyang situation, that Edu really has got his thumb on the pulse with Richard Garlick, and they're working as a team. And there was that feeling, Mitch, as well, that they wanted to slide Aubameyang back into the side. And Mikel said, I don't think so. Do one.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really interesting look at that whole saga that we didn't get to see them like really working hard up until the deadline to get that termination done of his contract. I think, a player on that high of wages who's like done that much for the club, like obviously you're gonna want him to like be able to stick around. If you're Edu or Richard Garlick, you're like, it's gonna be very difficult for us to get rid of him. And we saw what happened with Mesut Ozil when there was a falling out, and there wasn't anyone who wanted him because we just had to eat his contract for however long it was for that. And so it's a testament to them for actually being able to get something done with Barcelona, where they were able to find Aubameyang a new place to play, and it was a really, really interesting look at their process and stuff like that. Obviously, we don't know like how the conversations went with Aubameyang and Arteta when it came to potentially having him come back. Obviously, it didn't go great, and I think that like Arteta was pretty sold on like, okay, you clearly don't have like the drive to like work your way back. Therefore, like, I don't want anything to do with this. Like, you're going to be a bad personality to have in the dressing room after this whole saga. It's best for the both of us if we just go separate ways, which is like sad considering like what Aubameyang had done for the club, like the relationship that two of them had. But it's a testament to Garlick and Edu for being able to get those kind of deals done.
So it was interesting that Mikel said Mikel was asked, when did you know that it was over? His career was over at Arsenal. And he said, when I looked into his eyes. So it was quite a revelation, really. I've totally. Some people are a bit iffy about this series. We've spoken before, Jay, you in particular, saying that you don't want to see the club embarrassed or anything like that. And although there has been some sort of ridicule and mocking and all that sort of thing, I think we've come out of it very well, really.
Yeah, no, I've enjoyed it. You know, I have enjoyed it. We all know what's coming in the last couple of episodes. That, you know, you might not enjoy them, but I've enjoyed. I mean, you know, I liked the which performance was it where Mikel had COVID? Was it
Manchester City?
Yeah, City.
Yeah, and you know, there was so many parts of certain episodes where the squad are together, and Arteta's working hard on really working hard on getting the squad to try and gel together. You know, they're all arms around each other, and you know, Mikel's personality is coming across really well. You know, you don't get much. You don't get much of an input into the tactical side, do you? There's not really much of a tactical element of the show, you know. Obviously that Mikel obviously didn't want that, but it's a good show. There's still part of me that wishes it hadn't happened, because you kind of you do want things to stay behind closed doors, and I can imagine Mikel's quite enjoying the cameras not being there now. You know, and he's you know, and I can imagine some of the players enjoying the cameras not being there, stuck in their faces and stuff. But obviously the club are well paid. But it's a good show, and you know, for the neutrals, I can imagine it's really good. I enjoyed the Sunderland one, less so the Man City, but I'm sure when you watch it, Paul, you will enjoy it, because it's good television, and it gives you an insight into what goes on behind the scenes. You know, how Mikel handles the media, and how, you know, the day-to-day running of the club and training, but you don't get much of it insight into Arteta from a tactical point of view. But you do get a lot of drawings, don't you? You get a lot of Mikel drawing and getting his point across from that point way. And you know, these guys aren't brain surgeons, are they? You know, they need to be spoken to like that. They need to get their point. You know, Arteta needs to get his point across on a sort of a basic level. And you like to think that it's working now, you know.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? You know, we've got to accept. Paul, it'd be interesting to talk to you about this, because we're all on this podcast. We're all people that are objective, and we like to follow football in general, not just sort of our own teams. But there is a difference between the new modern management style as opposed to the old sort of Brian Clough kind of element, wasn't it? Brian Clough, case of light ale at half time, and a bit of a stare. And now you've got all this gubbins. You've got people coming in to look at your well-being, and these statisticians and almost scientists in a laboratory. It's a brand new game, isn't it, Paul?
Oh, absolutely is. I know we've talked in the past, Tom, haven't we, about maybe doing a podcast sometime comparing Howard Kendall's to George Graham, because they were huge successful managers from the 80s, but their methods now just would not fit in with the way the modern game is now. I know when Howard Kendall was Everton manager, you take the players out for the Chinese every Thursday evening, they'd have a skin full of beer, and they'd all express their opinions, but by the end of it, they're all together again. All the differences have been settled. Then they go out and play on the Saturday, and you know, in most cases, deliver the result. I know George Graham had a very draconian way of managing his team, but once again, what he did for Arsenal at a time when Arsenal were in quite a downwards spell of underachievements. I thought, that you've got the pitch there, Steve McMahon, the game at Anfield in '89. You know, what Graham did there. I watched the film Arsenal '89, and it's just comparing that with All or Nothing, because that's just a snapshot of one game. but all the planning that went into that, even the little things like Graham insisting that they travelled up on the motorway on the day of the game rather than staying overnight, so the players could see the fans. The psychology behind that, it's a simple thing to do, but you can see the effect of having the players, that they saw how much the fans were getting behind them for that game. They got, and even more so in that era when away fans weren't limited in numbers. I mean, you looked at Anfield Road end, Arsenal must have about 6,000-7,000 fans behind the goal for that game, which you wouldn't get now. So yeah, the whole management techniques have changed. And as you say, there's all these additional support, assistance, nutrition, psychology, etc., etc. And you do sometimes wonder when you see the list of people who are getting paid by the club what their actual job is sometimes. But it's I think when the Premier League first started, I think the model was the NFL, and more. I mean, I don't know what you think about this, Mitch, can be your experience stateside, but more and more the Premier League is becoming like the NFL with all these specialist coaches, specialist roles, increasing numbers of substitutions, etc., etc., etc. So it's definitely moved more and more in that direction, in my opinion. I may be wrong on that. And all the stats are I mean, in the 80s, we were talking football on a podcast here with Tom. You wouldn't be talking about stats, you wouldn't be talking about expected goals, you wouldn't be talking about assists, you'd just be talking about the game. And so that statistical analysis of football has changed dramatically in the past 30 years or so. So, my son's 21, he's really into all the stats and things, which is great for his generation. That's what they should be into. You're the product of the football you grew up watching, and you appreciate all the changes and innovations, but you can't escape the football you watched when you were a kid and how you viewed as a kid.
I think that you see that in every single sport, where every single sport has gone through like dramatic revolutions when it comes to stats and health and science and stuff like that. And I think it's just major developments in sports psychology and technology and stuff like that. In the NFL, for instance, there's so much technology that just goes into helmets, how to prevent like head injuries and long-term effects of them. And so you kind of have to do that in every single sport, because you have to adapt. Every single team is trying to find an edge. And so every single fan is going to want to learn more, or not every single fan, but a lot of fans are going to be interested in learning more. So you'll hear about something called like with XG, and you'll become really, really interested in it, and you'll be like, you want to understand like how it affects the game, how do clubs use these models to figure out tactical plans and stuff like that. And I mean, I think it's just a thing of every single sport and how it's evolved.
Two things left, chaps. We'll do the Bournemouth sort of roundup, what we think and stuff. But I found an interesting little piece here. It's on Sven Mislintat's time at Arsenal. And it makes pretty grim reading. Aubameyang cost us 58 million. I won't do all the prices and all that. Torreira, Leno, Socrates, Guendouzi, Mavropanos, Lichtsteiner, Mkhitaryan. We spent 129.4 million. We got 27.7 million back. Now, it just goes to show that football's got a bit bonkers, and that if you don't get the bottom line right, the recruitment, then you're bang in trouble. And just a little adage extra about Man United, there was a piece from Carve Solocol. Can't stand the guy, not after the Tomiyasu thing, sorry. But he said 15 years ago, the Glazer family borrowed 600 million to buy Manchester United. 15 years later, the debt is still 600 million. It's been loaded onto the club. The place is shambolic. If you've not been to Old Trafford, it's like an old bin lid, isn't it? It's falling apart. Never mind the theatre of dreams, it's the theatre of rummagers. It really is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and they're going to have to spend a lot, not only on, I mean, how much? They've spent £1 billion on that squad, and you've got Scott McTominay in it, for God's sake.
And Fred as well.
They're allergic to buying a DM. It's really, really funny. Like, they've needed a defensive midfielder for years, and they're just allergic to doing that. Like, they just refuse to fill their needs. And like, it's just been terrible organization and management by them for years. And now we're seeing it truly come to a head.
I'm not sort of mocking it, though. Sorry, Paul. I'm not sort of mocking it, because we found ourselves in that situation. It's not pleasant to sit there for 10 or 12 years watching the game pass you by and everyone doing proper business and having a great sort of time and being entertained. So we know what it's like. But sorry, Paul, you were going to say something.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Man United fans can feel quite reassured with the news that Michael Nyson is apparently back in with a bid for the club, you know, to the guy that he bought in 1989 with his ball juggling tricks in front of the Stretford end. So, yeah, it could be quite
That's
interesting.
just what they need.
Well, I think he's 71 now. So he did an interview on the Reason ITV channel here yesterday, and the guy's a basket case. So if he takes over United, I'll be delighted.
Right then, guys, up next it's Bournemouth. Jay, I'm going to kick off with you. What do you think Bournemouth are going to bring us? Is it going to be, you've got to accept that these newly promoted clubs, they're going to bring some energy, they're going to want to make a point and underline that. Are we going to get the full Monty Bournemouth, or have we got enough to just go out there and simply just slap them down?
I don't know what the full
Movement might stand.
I don't know what the full Monty Bournemouth is. I don't know what that is, but it'll be a tough game. The atmosphere will be pretty good, tight little ground. But we should have too much for them. We should. This isn't the toughest game of the season. I think we will get a result. I think it'll be. I think we could be a couple up by half time, and yeah, I think 2-0 win.
Well, that's very conservative.
Yeah, 2-0 maybe.
What about you, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, I think as Jay said, that it's always tough playing a promoted team when they've just come up and it's only their second home game of the season. I think what works in Arsenal's favour is the fact that Bournemouth got hammered at Manchester City last week. So I think they're coming into this game now knowing that they've arrived in the Premier League and there's some tough opposition. I think on paper, Arsenal have got way too much depth, quality and players to even, they've got enough depth in that side to get a convincing away win. I think if Arsenal score first, then the game's going to be over. Yeah, I mean, Bournemouth is a tiny little ground, but Arsenal really have just got too much quality for them. So I'd probably go for, if you put me on the spot, a 3-1 win for Arsenal.
Oh, we're liking that, Paul. We love having you on the pod. Very optimistic. Some of these sour sods we've had on in the past. Mitch, what's your opinion? What are we going to do? How many are we going to score?
I mean, I like Bournemouth, but I think that they're one of my. I think they'll get relegated this season. I don't expect them to do all that much. Unlike Fulham and Nottingham Forest, I don't think they've made enough waves in the transfer window to really like improve themselves out of just being like a good championship side. So on paper and the form we're in, we should get a resounding victory. But it's Premier League, anything can happen. So I would like to predict a 3-0 win. That's what I would like. But we'll see what happens in the match. Playing away in the Premier League, you never know.
What am I going to go? I think I will go with a 4-0. I think we're going to roll the goals in. I'm just getting too optimistic. That's the problem, isn't it? Really,
we're winning the league. We're winning the
league. By the way, I've just got to point out that last season we said that me and Jay, it was at the time because you wasn't with us at that period, Mitch. We said that Arsenal would come fourth. They'd come fourth. Me and Dave pumped up Martin Odegaard and said he'd be captain. He's captain. And earlier on, me and Jay were talking, and we said about third spot for Arsenal. So if that all comes true, we're doing a bit of the clock. We've got a witch in the house. All that it's not enough, not dry enough, not wet enough. But witches in the house. It's a massive book of excuses, isn't it, chaps? I was going to do this, but we'll do it another time.
Tom, just before we go, can I just ask Paul something? Are you glad Dele Alli's left?
Hey,
to be honest, yeah, I forgot he was with us. Yeah. I mean, the whole thing with Dele Alli was a really strange signing because it was obvious when he wasn't getting played from the start, and he wasn't that something was wrong. I mean, he turned up for training his first day game in a Rolls Royce. Now, you mentioned Aubameyang creating impressions. When you come to Everton, you turn up your first day training in a Rolls Royce. It just does not create the invited impression with the fans. He also turned up dressed for the fashion shoot, which, once again does not go down well with the fan base. So, I mean, personally, quite frustrated it hasn't worked out for him. And what I would say in his favour is that when he came on for the second half against Crystal Palace, he did have a big influence in that game. So I am thankful to him for that. But all during the summer, Lampard's been making little remarks that he needs to train best, he needs to be more committed. And you think, hang on, this guy's on $100,000 a week and he's not even training properly. So it's, as far as I can see, it's absolutely no losses whatsoever. I'm sure it's linked to the fact we've got to pay 10 million when he's made 20 appearances. And I'm also utterly convinced that the reason why Richarlison went to Tottenham is that there was some behind-the-scenes deal that we would take Ali off their hands in January and they could take Richarlison in the summer. I'm sure that there's something going on there behind the scenes. So will we miss him? Absolutely not. He's probably been our worst signing since the guy who got from Villa in January, El Ghazi, who played about 6 minutes.
Look at Mitch popped his head off. Mitch,
Yeah, so,
when I was at the Everton-Arsenal game at the end of the season, we booed the shit out of him every single time he was on the ball. It was very, very fun.
Someone fill me in. What happened? What happened? I haven't read anything about Dele Alli.
Dele Alli, he's gone to Besiktas.
Yeah.
Not 100% yet. I think it's still up to him to decide, but like Everton and Besiktas have like agreed on it.
Yeah.
But it's looking pretty likely.
I think it's the same. He's been shown the exit door, so I think he's not going to get first team football to go in the season. Once again he hasn't played, and he has to start out of the 2 games we have so far this season. So it's been a gamble that's backfired badly. But fortunately, you mentioned those disastrous transfer dealings before, Tom, for Arsenal. Fortunately, we haven't spent big bucks on Ali, so we're not actually losing money by shifting them out. So yeah, it's a win-win from Everton's point of view. And I can totally understand why you're booing him in the last game of the season as well, which interesting enough was the only time he started with Everton last season.
I'm not being funny, but Besiktas, I mean, what's that about? Who goes there? That's a bit like having your fortnight holiday on Streatham Common, isn't it? It's just, chaps, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's been great to have you all back as well, which is fantastic for the podcast, and it's been long overdue. We'll see you next time. Look after yourselves and take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Colin.